based on I'm going to wind up really. Unfortunately, I don't usually like to, but I haven't had much time to practice, so I'm going to probably be reading more of this than I normally would, but I'll try to keep it less formal than that. And you can feel free to interrupt me. That'll break up my flow a little. And I'll try to be quick. So this is based on multiple sources. Primarily, one of my main ones I relied on was Thubten Chodron's How to Free Your Mind, the Practice of Tara the Liberator, which is a fantastic Tara book. And Tara's Enlightened Activity by Khenchen Palden Sherab and Khenpo Gyurme Rinpoche. Those are the two that go through all 21 Taras one by one, but also give a really good introduction to Tara in general. And then another one that is a little off the beat here is the Red Tara, the Female Buddha of Power and Magnetism by Rachel Stevens. And she read a book by Chagdud Rinpoche, which is a commentary on a short Red Tara practice, which I'll talk a little bit about later. And as a result of reading that, on her way to a retreat in Kathmandu, she wound up spending her life researching this, so it's kind of interesting. And this is my personal Red Tara, my personal Tara library. So I did consult all of these one way or another. And this Red Tara commentary down on the bottom row is the one that Rachel Stevens read and then chased down. The history of Tara. So basically, there are three ways to think about Tara, three general ways, and I took this idea from Thubten Chodron mostly. One is that as a transcendent Buddha, which is primarily how we should be practicing her, we try to practice her. As a person who became a Buddha, which is the origin story of the transcendent Buddha, and as a historical practice lineage. And I'm going to approach these in the opposite order in which they're listed here. That's interesting. So as a historical practice lineage, the first texts we have are from the 6th or the 7th century. A lot of scholars like to say, oh, well, that's when it started, but that's to assume that there wasn't an oral tradition that could have existed for quite a long time before that, before any texts actually emerged. And I do understand, there's some overlap of iconography with Hindu tantra, and nobody has been able to disentangle that yet. Who came first? Who influenced whom, and all of that is still an open question, and I'm not sure how important it is in the end anyway, because the interpretations are different. In a culture that this is pure me, in a culture that projects all relied upon memory into the written word, it's difficult to conceive of a long practice tradition that wasn't written down. Because we think that the only text we can rely on are written texts, and that an oral tradition is unreliable. But all you have to do is look at the Variorum edition of the poems of William Yeats, and you'll see that the printed and written tradition isn't quite as clear as we would like to think it is. Anyway, there's evidence that Tara practice arrived in Tibet with the establishing Panditas, by whom I mean Guru Rinpoche, Shantarakshita, Vimalamitra, King Trisong Detsen. And but we don't have much record of what practices were engaged in. Tara's basic ritual text, the Tara Mula Kalpa, was brought into Tibet in 1042 by Atisha Dipam Kara Sri Jnana. His Tara was central practice to his practice. But that root tantra wasn't translated until Bhutan translated it in 1361. Susan Landsman published her English translation of that tantra, same tantra. We have an English one already in 2020, even though we haven't. So it came into English faster than it went into Tibetan, apparently, in a way. From the time we first encountered Buddhism, we got the tantra translated faster. There's oh well, I thought apparently I can't get off that page. There we go. For a little context, Bhutan's 1361 translation, Longchenpa, the great Nyingma, basically compiler of the Dzogchen teachings and the one from whom all of the Dzogchen lineages come from, lived from 1308 to 1364. So, the translation was 3 years before Longchenpa died, and it was Tsongkhapa was born and was what, 4 years old when it was translated. So Tara's mantra that we're accumulating and that we use, Om Tara Tu Tare Ture Swaha, is found in that root tantra. Tara's name is a causative. In Sanskrit. A causative is it's a verb. Like here we would say we cause something to happen, but in Sanskrit they actually have a verbal form that relates to causation like that. So her name means to cause to be rescued, or to cause to cross over. So she's the rescuer, but she's the one who causes people to be rescued, the one who causes people to cross over. There are a bunch of other seminal texts. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail. I'd be happy to send this paper to anybody who's interested in more detail. Than I'm not going to read this whole thing. But what we do have is a couple of other texts. One of Tsongkhapa's closest students said that the Tantra and the Origin of All Rites was the most important text at that time, which is, shortly after the root Tantra was translated, not very long after. And although we do have a Sanskrit, we have a Tibetan, no, we have a Sanskrit title. We don't have a Sanskrit text of that text. But that text is very interesting, partially because it includes. Now we also have it on that text is translated and it's free on 84,000.co. The translation of the words of the Buddha was translated in 2022. What is interesting about this is we don't have a Sanskrit text of it, but the praise to Tara with the 21 verses of homage, or the 21 Taras, or however you want to translate that, is actually included in that text in a transliterated Sanskrit. It's not translated in that text. It's transliterated Sanskrit, and I'll talk about what that means later. But so the version, there are two versions in the Kanjur of the 21 Taras. And there's disagreement about whether or not that's a translation from the transliterated Sanskrit that's in the Origin of All Rites, or whether it's a translation from a different source, or even from the original text. We don't know. But in any case, it's an extremely important prayer practice. So another way of looking at Tara is as a person who became a Buddha. And so, she was born as a princess, Yeshe Dawa, in a distant universe, unimaginably long ago, and against the wishes of her parents and the constraints of her culture. She wanted to become a Buddhist practitioner, and she vowed that one way or another she was going to liberate millions of beings each morning before breakfast, and millions more before lunch, and yet millions more before supper time. And that's how she came to be known as Tara the Liberator. But she also said, here there is no man, there is no woman, no self, no person, and no consciousness. Labeling male or female has no essence, but deceives the evil-minded world. And it's got a certain political ring to it these days. But nevertheless, because she saw that even though she realized that gender was a fiction itself, she realized that many Buddhas had become Buddhas in male form, but very few, if any, in female form. So she vowed to attain Buddhahood in female form to make it clear that, yes, females could also be liberated. And another story tells us that she was born from the mother and father emptiness and wisdom in the heart of Avalokiteshvara and projected out into the world. And another origin story says that she was born from Avalokiteshvara was crying because he was unable to save all of the beings at that moment, and she was born from a tear in his eye. But I'll leave those stories for another time and get to what I think is the more important story, which is Tara as a celestial Buddha. This isn't fitting in the screen, is it? Come on. There, I hope that's better. This is a quotation from Thubten Chodron. Tara is not a concrete, self-existent person with a personality. And for this reason, we train our minds to see her as an emanation of all the good qualities that we admire and want to cultivate. And Thubten Chodron says that another way to understand Tara is as a manifestation or embodiment of enlightened qualities. Anyone who has attained Buddhahood can appear in the form of any of the deities. There isn't just one Green Tara, or 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara, or one Manjushri, or one Vajrapani, and so forth. These are simply appearances, emanation. And then one further Thubten Chodron quote. Each deity is a manifestation of the same enlightened qualities: love, compassion, joy, equanimity, generosity, ethical discipline, patience, enthusiasm, concentration, wisdom, and so forth, although each manifestation may emphasize a particular quality. So Tara is an emanation of bliss and emptiness, still Thubten Chodron, different parts of the book, but within the sphere of emptiness, the absence of inherent existence. Blissful wisdom, realizing emptiness, appears in the form of Tara. By appearing in this physical form of Tara, the wisdom of bliss and emptiness of all Buddhas inspires us to cultivate constructive attitudes and actions. So, each of Tara's manifestations, whether there's 1, 21, 108, or an infinite number, is an emanation of bliss and emptiness. And that also emphasizes some other aspect, depending on which emanation we're talking about, which color, which Tara. So now, because I know you don't, a lecture on Tara was not what anybody really wanted, I'm going to talk a little bit about my own experience with Tara. Really, my first awareness of Tara at all was when I stumbled into an empowerment by Nyoshul Khenpo Rinpoche, the great Dzogchen master of Guru Rinpoche, Padmasambhava, which is my first encounter with Tibetan Buddhism. He said that this empowerment also empowered us to practice Green Tara. I didn't really know what he was talking about, but I remember it. And then so not long after that, I began practicing with a group with one of, I'm sorry, my eyes are really bothering me today. I started practicing with a former attendant of Dudjom Rinpoche who was entrusted by Chagdud Rinpoche to lead his Sangha in New York City at the time. And we practiced a red Tara, this brief red Tara text that Chagdud Rinpoche taught and empowered us with. Ultimately, later I got the empowerment, and it was the first mantra that I ever did 100,000 of. Om Tare Tam Soha, which is a shorter mantra than our Green Tara mantra. And because I've actually always had more of an affinity kind of for the Lotus family. For some reason, Amitabha always resonated with me from the first moment I became aware of Amitabha. And I think that's probably why I wound up with the teachers that I had, is because they were all Lotus family teachers, really. Because Guru Rinpoche is a Lotus family also. Chagdud Rinpoche, that red Tara, it's an interesting story, so I'm just going to tell it because I think it's an interesting story myself. Apong Terton was considered one of the great Tertons of the Nyingma lineage. And when he was on his deathbed, he told one of his students that he needed to find his reincarnation. He told him where to look for him and everything, and that he should teach his reincarnation this red Tara practice, and then give him the empowerment for the practice. And so while Apong Terton's student was searching for Apong Terton Yangtze, the reincarnation, he encountered Chagdud Rinpoche in the Himalayas and gave that empowerment to Chagdud Rinpoche, and Chagdud Rinpoche turned around and went into an extended retreat on the practice until he had signs of accomplishment. So, and that continues with so I practiced that quite a lot, and I received the empowerment for that from Chagdud Rinpoche. And then also from his student Tsering Everest, Lama Tsering Everest, who they wound up translating the entire empowerment. So that's the only empowerment I've had entirely in English, was the Red Tara empowerment, which was an interesting difference of experience from other things. Chagdud Rinpoche, oops, sorry. Somehow I stopped my share. I'll keep talking while I try to figure it out. Chagdud Rinpoche, he invited Khenpo Gyurme Trinley to come to California and teach. But Khenpo, I'm gonna stop the share and reshare it. But Khenpo was the abbot of the monastery of the Queen Mother in Bhutan. And the king of Bhutan did not want him to leave. So it took several years for Khenpo Gyurme Trinley to leave Bhutan, but he finally did, and he went to California and he taught at Rigson Ling, which is Chagdud Rinpoche's practice center up in the Trinity Alps, Northern California. I'm sorry for this, how disturbed this whole presentation is. After Chagdud Rinpoche died, I started practicing with the Sangha of Jatro Rinpoche in San Francisco, and at that time they were in San Francisco, and then later in Alameda. And he would invite His Holiness Pino Rinpoche came several times at his invitation to teach. And at one of Pino Rinpoche's empowerments in Berkeley, this monk walked in the middle of the empowerment, acting like he walked in like he was in charge of the whole place. So and then they stopped the empowerment, and Pina Rinpoche talked to him for a while, and then he went over and he took the first place in the seats with the Khenpo benches and everything. So a little later in that little later, when the empowerment was over, he was walking around. I walked up to him and I said, "Who are you? Are you some kind of important guy or something?" And he started laughing. He thought that was pretty funny. And he gave me his card. He told me to call him. He asked me told me to give him my phone number. I gave him my phone number. The next day he called me. He said, you come see." And I went and became his student. And Khenpo and I became pretty close, really, I think. Anyway, Khenpo at that time was teaching well, this is the other thing about Khenpo. When he left Tibet, he was 9 years old and being chased by the Red Army. He was with about 1,000 people, and only 100 of them made it to India. But Khenpo felt that Tara was with him the whole way, and that Tara protected him and made it possible for him to get to India and become a Khenpo and then come to the United States and so forth. When I met him, he was teaching a Maha Yoga Green Tara based on a sadhana from the great Dudjom Lingpa, which this text, it was hard. It was a hard text to practice. It was very long. It included all the 21 Taras. It was all in both Tibetan and in English, and we always practiced it in both Tibetan and English. So it took like 2 hours to do the practice one time through every time. And then I rented it was, for me, it was like a battle. It was just a battle doing this practice all the time. It was just really hard for me. And I rented a storefront in the Haight in San Francisco so that Khenpo would have a place for a center that people could come every day if they wanted to. But, because there was nobody but me and a couple of other people, my girlfriend and a couple of other people, and mostly just me, that I would just go every day after work and at that center and lead that Tara practice every day. So we wound up with some students from the Vajrayana Foundation would come practice with us quite a bit, with me quite a bit, quite often. And Khenpo would come every Sunday. He would show up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we would practice until 10 o'clock at night, and only take like an hour lunch. He was like just nonstop. Anyway, I just, maybe it's because of the way I was exposed to Tara. Maybe it's because I just didn't never felt any affinity with Tara. I just had no affinity. And then Mindroling, the sleeping Buddha they call Mindroling, told Khenpo that he needed to translate Nyala Pema Dundal's works into English. And he worked with the translator, and they translated a Nyala Pema Dundal Green Tara, which is a really advanced text. It's a Maha Yoga text, but it's a dzogchen with visualization. It's very, very advanced, and I do like that text quite a lot. But then Khenpo died shortly after that, and well, I have other practices that have always been really important to me. So what is, what was my problem with Tara? This is my $64 question. With inflation, I guess it's more like the $1 million one, but it wasn't a gender thing. It wasn't because Tara was female and I was male, people used to tell me I love Tromonogmo practice, and people used to tell me, well, that's mostly for women, men aren't so much trauma, but trauma is really a deep practice for me. So it wasn't because Tara was female. But somehow with Tara, always had a hard time thinking of her as a Buddha, as a transcendent. My as my visualization as being representative of a transcendent Buddha. I just never had that mystic. There was not that mystic kind of a mystical spark with Tara, the way I had with other practices. And but as I thought about it, it's actually a problem that I have kind of had with peaceful deities really more. Because I felt the same way about Manjushri. Manjushri to me was always like, ah man, I would really like to practice Manjushri. And I start practicing Manjushri, and Manjushri feels like this lightweight thing to me, you know? Very strange. Um, And I think that it does have something to do with the way I entered the path. My first encounter with Buddhism was a skull fracture where I had lost the ability to speak. And I was introduced to Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, which is a Nichiren practice. But it brought through doing that mantra, I was able to speak. I brought my speech back. I brought concentration back, and then okay, so fine. And then I decided, over the years, that wasn't really my practice. It wasn't really my world to be involved with that, and I started long process, but I wound up so finally I meet a Tibetan Lama. I finally meet Chagdud Rinpoche. And Chagdud Rinpoche is just like boom, and high yoga, Maha Yoga empowerments, chant mantra, do mantras, do mantras. You need to do more mantras. You need to do this. It's like I went into it. It was like going into a boot camp, sort of, in a way. So what I always had a really nice affinity with were really more the wrathful deities. And that, I think, is because of the way my experience was coming in. That's a lot of wrathful kind of energy happening. Lama Jinpa talks about how he actually, I had that on that page, didn't I? I'm probably skipping around. He Lama Jinpa talks about how he didn't receive an empowerment until he had meditated for many years. Well, I have mine's the opposite. And uh, and then even when I did meditate, when I did like really extensive sitting meditation for a while with Theravada monks, I started having I was having trauma. It just I went into a complete breakdown and bad trauma with it all and everything. So I never had this very much of a connection with all of this peaceful stuff. I never had any real uh, affinity with it, except for Amitabha and Vajrasattva. I never, for some reason, they were the exceptions. But so this pressurized world, my entire life was pressurized like that. My work life, everything I did was always, from the time I was a child, we moved from state to state while I grew up, always being thrown into situations. So I bring this samsaric, traumatized, we gotta struggle to survive, mentality into the Dharma, right? And then Lama Jinpa, I said, Lama, I'm trying to decide what I should put at the center of my practice. I'm thinking Vajrakalaya, which is a wrathful deity and one that I have kind of extensive teachings and empowerments with. And he said, well, that might be. And he said, and I said, or I was thinking maybe even I should do Manjushri, even though I don't feel any affinity really for Manjushri. I think maybe that would be good. And he said, well, tonight, remember your dream from tonight, tomorrow morning, and we'll talk about what your dream was tonight. So we talked about that, and the upshot is that Manjushri became the practice, and that was shortly before I left Sacramento to come to Pennsylvania. And during that trip across the United States in this, really loud, really kind of very primitive diesel box truck, 26-foot box truck, coming across during the height of the pandemic, Manjushri became very close to me on that trip. And and yet, and I continued with that. And now Tara has completely transformed for me. Now I can just sort of hang out with Tara. So this, this peaceful energy that I never had really understood before. Not in practice. It's not that I didn't have any peaceful energy in my world at all, but I really brought the trauma into my practice. Now I can kind of just be with Tara, and I can sit with the mantra with Tara, with my wisdom aspect of Tara, and the meditative states that I experience uh, are more profound than anything that I ever experienced before. So, um, yeah, so that's basically it. Except that, of course, we're trying to accumulate a lot of mantras for Lama Jinpa, and so now I'm like, no, I just hang out with the mantra. I'm not in any hurry to do, 1 million of them or 100,000 or 10,000. Now it's just like Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Soa. Just like very peaceful, very slow, very open. Okay. So that's my story. And now I just do want to talk a little bit about the mantras that we encounter, in our Tibetan texts, because it used to really confuse me. And I've had people tell me, no, 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 that's Tibetan. That's Tibetan. You can see, look at it. It's Tibetan. It's not Sanskrit. I'm here to tell you those mantras are Sanskrit. Um, and I always knew that they were transliterated into Tibetan, but I didn't know anything about it. Um, and I think that a lot of the translators don't really understand that transliteration system either. Dan Martin here and I have been taking Tibetan from a former Tibetan nun who is very it's a hard, difficult course, but she right away taught us that transliteration system. And she even said, most people don't know this when she taught it. And by that, she's a working translator named Kunsang. She's Spanish. So I'm not gonna teach it to you because that would require a whole bunch of other stuff, but I just want to give you the concepts. Um, the Did I mess something up? Probably. Um, okay, I'm gonna have to just wing it. In fact, I'm gonna stop the share now. So the Sanskrit, there's a transliteration system in English for Sanskrit, and you see it. I had examples in this, but somehow I lost them. You see it. You see like a dot under a T. That indicates a cerebral, where you touch your tongue to the top. That tea. I want you to hear Tibetan. Hear Indian. Oh, we're gonna drink tea. That kind of sound, or the S, as opposed, and with a dot under the S, it's a sound, or a little mark above the S, that's a sh sound. and so on. There are several, or the dot under the M or on top of the M, depending on which system is being used, is also that's called the kind of a universal nasal. It could be an mm, 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 mm. It could be any one of 4 different nasals, depending on what the next consonant is. So we've got a very strict. Every letter in Sanskrit has an equivalent within that transliteration system. Unfortunately, a lot of texts don't include that. Some of them don't include it because they don't know it. Others don't include it because they say, well, we don't want to confuse people with the transliteration system. Unfortunately, I think that creates more confusion because you can't even look up what the word really is. And sometimes the words are very close to other words, and it's just a lot of confusion. I think it would be better just to include it. It's easy enough to ignore them if you don't know what they are. Anyway, Tibetan does exactly the same thing. The Tibetans did exactly the same thing. They have a system for representing in Tibetan script every sound that's made in Sanskrit. And it looks like Tibetan uchen script, although if you learn Tibetan uchen script, you can see how it doesn't quite look like it. It's similar, but not exactly the same. But a lot of the translators see, okay, Tibetan does that. They've got a very strict transliteration system. Everything in Sanskrit is just perfectly replicated in Tibetan, which is a tradition in Sanskrit. Sanskrit's written in all kinds of scripts, not just Devanagari. Devanagari, in fact, is a late script. It's nothing early. But what happens with Tibetan and a lot of our practice texts is because Tibetan is such a weird language, the weird in terms of, it's like French. It's like if you just look at French and try to read it, if you don't know French, you're not going to pronounce anything correctly as an English speaker. Tibetan's just like that. If they give us every letter in Tibetan, you've seen it, RGSDOGNG. How do you pronounce that? You don't have any idea. So what they do is they give us a phonetic representation of the Tibetan in the text so that we can say it along with them when we read Tibetan with them. We have no idea what we're saying. And unfortunately, even a Tibetan somebody who knows Tibetan can't read those phonetics and have any confidence that they know what it is. So it's this weird representation of sound that doesn't have any kind of lexical meaning at all. The same thing is done with the mantras. We have this phonetic representation of the Sanskrit mantras, but it's a phonetic representation of the way Tibetans say it, of the sound they make. It doesn't give us any clarity of what it is that we're actually dealing with. Now, I'm not saying that people need to pronounce the Sanskrit mantras, the way we believe Sanskrit is pronounced. I'm taking a course in spoken Sanskrit right now, which is a strange thing to do. But so it's fine, pronounce it like the Tibetans. But to me, it would be very helpful if we just actually had the diacriticals and the mantras, if we had some clarity about that. So that's just so that you know what you see when you're looking at the page. You're seeing Sanskrit, but you're seeing a representation of Sanskrit as written by, well, I don't know if Charles Dickens wrote a lot of dialect in his novels. He wrote so much dialect in his novels that people now have a really hard time reading Charles Dickens because of that. And so it's kind of a similar thing. You want to pronounce the dialect, that's fine, but you realize that you're not pronouncing the Sanskrit. It's not truly Sanskrit sounds. That's all. Okay, I'm done. And that's, I was gonna, you know what? Here we go. Let me just show you sort of a little what I mean. That's what I was gonna do. Change to a different Well, stop share, go over to my other program, change tabs. It's the problem is working through multiple programs. Okay. Just quickly, what else? I'll show you what I mean. So this is our text that we're working with, which is this text actually comes. I brought this text because Geshe La, when Geshe Sewang Dorje was here with the Green Tara mandala, I showed this text to Geshe Damche, and he said, that's the one we should use. So this is the text that's being taught. I was at the empowerment for this, and so this is like just the original text that was translated for that empowerment. Let me see here quickly. Well, here we go. This Om Guru Arya Tara Sapadiwara, right? Namo Guru Pyach, Namo Ara. This is all, this is actually, this whole bunch of them. This is Sanskrit, but it's Sanskrit in a Tibetan uchen script. Now, in this particular text, I've noticed a bunch of errors. But the reason there are errors is because the people it keeps getting copied by people who don't know Sanskrit. And so even though they know the Tibetan, they don't know the Sanskrit, so they make little errors that they don't notice because they don't know Sanskrit. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm actually very grateful we have these texts, but it's good to know that what you're looking at, I think. In my opinion, it's better to know than not to know. There are some people who hold a different opinion. They say don't confuse people with knowledge, but I think we'd all be better off if more people were confused with more knowledge. So this is what I'm talking about. That's all. Does anybody have any comments or questions or suggestions, or as Lama says, complaints?
I had one question. Did you correct the errors?
Hey, Doug.
Yeah, hi. Did you correct the errors?
Can't hear you.
Oh, huh.
Oh, you know what? It's not your fault. It's mine. I had it on mute and I didn't know it. Okay.
Did you correct the errors in that text?
I did, but you know what? I missed a couple of them. I need to rework it. But I don't know if I don't think they're using my text. I created a clean text of the whole thing, but I think they're still using the photocopy of the original.
Oh, I thought the one I have at the bottom has your name on it.
Oh, it does? Okay. And you know why I did that? Because you have to know who to blame. They used to the scribe would put their name on it because that way they could say, hey, you know, what's this about?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The texts have revised, lightly edited.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And you should because you want to know, you know, who changed it. So are you having it printed?
No, I just, when the first time it was presented publicly online, there was a link to it, to your text, and I saved the link to my files.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I need to correct that. I mean, but there are a couple of errors that I missed. And who knows, I might have introduced some. That's the part of the problem with correcting things. You introduce a new one.
I had a quick comment or question for you, Dirk. You were speaking about the peaceful aspect of Tara. I was wondering if maybe you could comment a little bit about, like, I've always found there to be an energetic aspect of it too, in terms of removing obstacles. And Lama Jinpa, even yesterday, was talking about her association with the wind energy, and so there's this, to me, always been this kind of energetic aspect as well, which I guess isn't doesn't contradict peacefulness, but it peacefulness to me has sort of a less, as more a passive kind of energy. I don't know what I was just curious what you thought about that.
No, I think that's true. I just didn't make the connection.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why. I just always had a block with Tara.
Okay.
And for me, it's just good to I just need that kind of just be with her to sort of overcome that block, I think. I really don't know why I had the block with Tara.
Mm.
All
It's
of
funny.
my all of
Never
my
knew that.
lamas were into Tara.
Yeah. I never knew you had that block.
Yeah, I never really
Probably never talked about it. Yeah.
well, okay, I don't think I really realized it.
Mm.
I didn't really realize how much of a block I had until the block started going away.
Mm. Got it. Okay.
I didn't I just thought I had a rather shallow practice. I didn't realize that I had that I had obstacles that way. Yeah. It's really what it is. I have an obstacle with Tara.
Mm. Thank you. Great talk.
But yeah, that the energy, and actually thank you for pointing that out, because I need to think of that more when I think of Tara, because that'll help enliven me somehow, I think.
Okay. Thank you.
That's why I said in my little précis about the talk that I was hoping people could help me, and you just did.
Well, you helped me as well. So thank you.
Well, if there aren't any further, nobody wants to chastise me for not having a good Tara connection. Oops. I tell you, I'm having quite the maybe Tara's chastising me. No, she's not. I guarantee it. And this is, that's another thing I had to overcome, was this feeling that, somehow they were going to chastise me. I don't know where that comes from. I don't come from a religious family, but it must just be really deep, and either just in my consciousness or in our culture. Not sure where it comes from, but I still always have this secretly deep down inside that these Buddhas are gonna, slap me for doing something wrong, for making a misstep, for not doing more. I worry more about for not doing something than for doing something. Anyway, I know better. So, due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish, but increase more and more. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good, all-powerful Tenzin Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso. Please remain until samsara ends. May the teachings of the Buddha flourish. May the upholders of the teachings remain forever. May all migrators achieve happiness, and may they fulfill all their temporary and ultimate goals. Losang, magical display of the deep awareness of all the victorious ones, merciful giver of a stream of profound and vast instructions to the fortunate migrators. Please remain always unperishing, unchanging, unfading. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of objectless compassion. Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom. Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Maras. Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the snowy land sages. Losang Drakpa, I make request at your holy feet. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you'll come on the next lunar quarter and practice with me and teach me about Tara. See you soon.
Thank you, Dirk.
Thanks, Dirk.
Omo araya pacaya indi Om araya pacana